I know what brought you here tonight. Not the algorithm, not a recommendation. Something deeper, something that stirred quietly in your chest at 2 a.m. when the house was dark and the silence was louder than any noise you've ever heard. You were lying there, eyes open, staring at a ceiling you've stared at 1,000 times before, and you whispered a prayer so small, so fragile, that you weren't sure God even heard it. Maybe you weren't sure you even believed anymore. And that's the part you don't tell anyone, isn't it? The part where faith, the thing you've carried your whole life like a lantern in your hand, started to flicker. Not die, just flicker. Just enough to make you wonder if the light was ever real, or if you'd been holding a lantern with no flame and calling it faith because the alternative was too frightening to face. I see you, not because I'm special, but because I've sat in that same darkness. And I know that the prayers you've been whispering feel like they're hitting a wall made of silence. I know that somewhere along the way, life took something from you that you weren't ready to give. A person, a marriage, a version of yourself that used to laugh without thinking about it first. A future you had already painted in your mind, brushstroke by brushstroke, only to watch the canvas get torn. You're past 50 now, and there's a particular kind of weight that comes with these years. A weight that younger people can't see because it's invisible. It lives in the space between what you thought your life would be and what it actually became. It lives in the phone calls you don't get anymore, in the chair that's empty at the table, in the mirror that shows you a face you're still learning to forgive for aging. But here's what I need you to understand, and I need you to lean into this, because everything that follows depends on it. That weight is not a punishment. That silence you've been hearing, it's not God ignoring you, it's something else entirely. Something I'm going to show you in the next few minutes that will change the way you hear silence forever. There's an ancient passage, thousands of years old, that speaks about exactly this. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand, it simply says, "Be still and know." 4 words. But those 4 words carry something so immense that when you finally understand what they're really saying, not what you've been told they mean, but what they're actually saying, something inside you will shift like a tectonic plate, moving beneath the surface of everything you thought you knew. I'm not going to give it to you yet, not because I'm holding it back, but because you're not ready to receive it, not because you're unworthy. You are more worthy than you know, but because the heart has to be softened first. The ground has to be prepared. You can't plant a seed in frozen soil and expect it to grow. And right now, if I'm being honest with you, and I will always be honest with you, there's a part of your heart that is frozen. Not dead, frozen. And that's a very different thing. So stay with me, because what's coming next is the thing that begins the thaw. And once it starts, once that ice begins to crack and the water beneath it begins to move again, you will feel something you haven't felt in a very long time. You'll feel peace, real peace, not the word, the thing itself. But first, I need to tell you about a particular kind of silence, the kind that isn't empty at all, the kind that's so full it terrifies us. And that silence is where we're going next. Let me tell you something about silence that nobody ever tells you. We treat silence like it's the enemy. We fill it with the television, with the radio in the car, with phone calls that last too long, because the alternative is hanging up and being alone with our own thoughts. And at night, when the world finally goes quiet and there's nothing left to fill the space, that's when it rushes in. The grief, the regret, the question that don't have answers. But what if I told you that the silence you've been running from is not empty? What if I told you it's the loudest prayer you've ever prayed? Think about that for a moment. Every night you lay awake, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep, turning things over in your mind. The loss you haven't processed, the child who grew up and moved away, the marriage that ended not with a slam, but with a whisper, the diagnosis that changed the shape of your future. Every one of those sleepless nights was not a failure of faith. It was faith in its most raw, most honest form. You were praying. You just didn't know it. Your silence was the prayer. The ache was the language. And God was not ignoring it. God was listening to it. There's a passage in the Psalms, Psalm 46, that most people have heard at least once in their life. They hear it at funerals, sometimes at weddings, occasionally read from a pulpit on a Sunday morning. It says, "God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble." And most people stop right there. They hear refuge, and they picture a fortress, stone walls, iron gates, something that shuts the world out. But the word refuge in the original language carries something softer. It means a shelter that you run into, not because the storm is coming, but because the storm is already here, and you can't take one more step. It's not a fortress you admire from a distance. It's the place you collapse when your legs give out. And that word, present, a very present help, not a distant help, not a help that arrives eventually, a help that is already in the room before you even knew you needed it. Now, here's what I want you to sit with. God was present in your 2 a.m. silence, not as an answer you missed, not as a voice you failed to hear. God was present as the silence itself. The silence wasn't the absence of God. It was God holding space for everything you couldn't say out loud. I know that's hard to accept, because we've been taught that God speaks, that God answers. That prayer is a conversation, words going up, words coming down. And when the words stop, when nothing comes back, we assume the line went dead. But what if the line didn't go dead? What if God simply switched to a different language, one that doesn't use words? A language made of stillness, of presence, of the kind of knowing that happens beneath thought, beneath language, beneath even understanding. There's a garden I want you to picture, your garden, not one you've planted, one that lives inside you. Over the years, through every winter of your life, every loss, every disappointment, every season where it felt like nothing was growing, you assumed that garden had died. The ground froze, the branches went bare. You looked at the empty space inside yourself and thought, there's nothing left here. The cold killed it. But gardens don't die in winter. They wait. Everything goes underground. The roots hold. The life pulls inward deeper where the frost can't reach. And the silence, that terrible aching silence you've been afraid of, is the sound of your garden doing exactly that. Pulling life deeper, protecting what's most essential, preparing for a spring you couldn't see coming because you were too busy staring at the frozen ground. The psalmist knew this. Later in that same passage, the one that begins with refuge, the voice shifts. It stops describing God and starts speaking to the soul. It says, "Be still and know." Not be still and figure it out. Not be still and have all the answers. Be still and know. As if the knowing doesn't come from thinking. As if the knowing is already there, buried under all the noise you've been making to avoid the silence. And the only thing standing between you and that knowing is your refusal to be still long enough to receive it. But here's the question that changes everything. The one I've been building toward. What if the stillness isn't something you do, but something you allow? What if peace isn't something you chase, but something that's been chasing you, and you've been running too fast to let it catch up? There's a reason you're still here, listening, and it has nothing to do with me. I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer it honestly, Not to me, but to yourself, in that quiet space behind your ribs where the truth lives, before your mind gets a chance to edit it. When was the last time you prayed and actually expected something to happen? Not recited, not repeated, not performed out of habit or guilt, or the faint hope that maybe this time the words would break through. I mean prayed. The way you prayed when you were younger, when the words came out raw and unpolished, and you meant every single syllable with your whole body. The way you prayed before life taught you to be careful with your hope. Because here's what happens, and I know this because it happened to me. Somewhere between 30 and 50, most of us learn to pray smaller, not on purpose, not overnight. It happens the way a river narrows. So gradually you don't notice until suddenly you're standing at a trickle of what used to be a flood. You stop asking for healing and start asking for endurance. You stop asking for restoration and start asking for acceptance. You stop knocking on the door and start sitting outside it, back against the wall, whispering, "Whatever you will, Lord," not because you've reached some holy place of surrender, but because you're afraid that if you knock one more time and nobody answers, the last thing holding you together will break. I know, I see it, and I need you to hear what I'm about to say next, because it changes the entire landscape. God is not on the other side of that door. That door, the one you stopped knocking at, was never a barrier between you and God. It was a barrier you built between yourself and the answer that was already inside you. The psalmist said it, and we've been misunderstanding it for centuries. Be still and know that I am God. We read that as a command to quiet down so God can speak. But what if it's something else entirely? What if be still means stop fighting, stop striving, stop performing, stop building cases for why you deserve an answer? Stop presenting your prayers like a courtroom argument. Just stop. And in the stopping, in the surrender of all that effort, something opens. Not a door, something deeper, something you can't reach with your hands. Let me give you an image. Picture a river. Not a grand cinematic river, a small one. The kind that runs through the woods behind a house you lived in once. The kind you maybe walked beside on an evening when you needed to think. That river doesn't try to reach the ocean. It doesn't strategize. It doesn't map its course or calculate the distance. It simply flows. Over rocks, around fallen trees, through narrow passages where the banks press close, and it arrives. Not because it pushed hard enough, because it followed the shape of the ground that was already there. Your life is that river, and every season of loss, every winter that felt like it would never end, those weren't obstacles blocking your path. They were the banks that shaped you, guided you, narrowed you, yes? But narrowing is not dying. Narrowing is becoming. A river is most powerful where it's most constricted, not because it fights the banks, but because it moves through them with a force that doesn't come from the river itself. It comes from something upstream, something eternal. Your hands have aged. I know you've looked at them, maybe this morning, maybe last night, and seen the changes, the veins more visible, the skin thinner, the strength different from what it was at 30. But those hands still know how to fold in prayer. And that's not a small thing. That's not a residual habit. That is the deepest kind of knowing. The kind that lives in the body, in the muscle, in the decades of reaching toward something invisible and never letting go. Here's what I've been building toward, and I want you to let this land without reaching for it. The peace you've been praying for isn't ahead of you. It's not in the next answer, the next breakthrough, the next season, where things finally feel okay again. It's beneath you. It's the ground you've been standing on this whole time. even when you couldn't feel it through the soles of your shoes. The psalmist knew, there is a river whose stream make glad the city of God, not a river you travel to, a river you're already standing in. And the silence, that silence you've been afraid of, is the sound of its current moving through you, carrying away what you no longer need to hold. But there's one more thing, something about what happens when the river meets the sea. And that's where everything changes. You've been standing in the river this whole time. But there's something about rivers that most of us forget, something we don't learn until we've lived long enough to see a few of them reach their end. A river doesn't know it's going to the ocean. It doesn't have a map. It doesn't sit at its source and plan the journey, decide which mountains it will cross, which valleys it will flood, which cities it will pass through on its way to something bigger. It simply moves. It follows the pull, and the pull is not something it understands. The pull is something it is. Your life has been that river, and if you're being honest, and I think by now you're willing to be honest, because there's no one here but you and the truth. There were seasons where you felt like you were going dry, seasons where the current slowed to almost nothing, and you looked at the banks closing in around you and thought, this is it. This is where I end. The years after the divorce, the months after the diagnosis, the long gray stretch after you buried someone you loved more than your own breath. Those were the narrows. And in the narrows, the river doesn't die. The river concentrates. Everything that isn't essential gets stripped away. The current becomes faster, harder, more honest, because there's nowhere to hide anymore. No room for pretense, no space for the person you thought you were supposed to be. Just you, the rawness, and whatever is on the other side. And then, every single time, though you never saw it coming, the banks opened up again. You didn't do that. You couldn't have. You were too busy surviving the narrows to engineer your own widening. Something did it for you, something that has been running underneath every season of your life, hidden beneath the surface, and it has never, not once, let you run dry. The psalmist wrote, there is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. And for most of your life, you probably read that as geography, a city, a river, a place on a map. But the city of God isn't a location, it's you. You are the place where God dwells. And the river that makes glad, that river is the prayer that has been flowing through you since the day you first learned to fold your hands and whisper into the dark. Every prayer you ever prayed, the desperate ones, the angry ones, the ones you didn't finish because the tears came. Every one of them is still flowing. They didn't evaporate. They didn't hit a wall. They joined the river, and the river has been carrying you even when you thought you were standing still. Here's where it turns. Here's where the ground shifts beneath everything you thought you knew about prayer. The river doesn't reach the ocean by trying. It reaches the ocean by surrendering. The moment a river stops fighting its own current, stops trying to be a different river, stops trying to flow in a direction it was never meant to go, is the moment it arrives. Not because it got stronger, because it let go. That's what "be still and know" has been saying all along. Not "be quiet so God can work." Not "stop sinning so God will hear you." Be still. Stop fighting your own current. Stop trying to be the river you think you should be, and let yourself be the river you are. And in that stillness, in that surrender, the knowing comes, not as information, not as a voice from the sky, as something quieter and more certain than anything you've ever heard. It rises from beneath. It fills the space you've been clenching without realizing you were clenching it. And you discover, for the first time, or perhaps for the first time in a very long time, that the peace you've been begging God to send you is not something God sends. It's something God is. And it's been here, in the river, in you all the whole time. I told you I'd show you what happens when the river meets the sea. But the truth is more astonishing than you're prepared for. And I need you to hear it in the right way, not as an explanation, but as a revelation. When a river meets the sea, it doesn't disappear. It becomes part of something it always belonged to. If you're still here with me, if you've stayed through every word, every silence, every turn in this river we've been following together, then you are exactly the kind of person I hoped would find this video. Because it takes something rare to sit still long enough to listen. Most people scroll past. Most people aren't ready. But you stayed. And that tells me something about you that maybe you don't even fully see yet. So I want to ask you something. Not as a stranger on a screen, but as someone who's been walking beside you through this. Subscribe to this channel. Not because I need a number. Because you and I both know that the kind of prayer we've been talking about tonight isn't a one-time thing. It's a daily river. And if this spoke to something inside you, if it touched that frozen place and started even the smallest crack, then come back tomorrow, come back the day after. Let this become part of your current. There's more waiting for you here. And I want you to be part of it when it arrives. You know, there's something about being past 50 that younger people can't understand, no matter how hard they try. It's this. You stop needing proof. You've lived long enough to know that the most real things in your life, love, grief, faith, forgiveness, none of them came with evidence. They came as knowing. And by now, you've learned to trust the knowing over the proving. That's not naivety. That's the rarest kind of wisdom. And most people won't live long enough to earn it. And it's exactly that knowing I want you to carry into what comes next. Because the river is about to reach the sea. And what happens in that moment? The moment the current stops being a current and becomes something vast, something boundless, something that has no banks and no bottom. That's where everything I've been saying collapses into a single, shattering truth. The psalmist wrote, "Be still and know that I am God." 6 words. But in the original language, they carry something no translation has ever fully captured. And when you hear it, when you finally hear what those 6 words have been saying to you across 3,000 years of silence, the river inside you will meet the sea inside you, and you will never pray the same way again. Here is what happens when the river meets the sea. It doesn't crash. It doesn't explode. It doesn't arrive with thunder or fireworks or some grand cinematic moment where the clouds part and a voice booms from the heavens. That's what we keep expecting. That's what we keep praying for. The dramatic answer, the unmistakable sign, the proof. But the river meets the sea the way morning meets night. Gradually, quietly, in a place where the water changes so slowly that you can't point to the exact moment it stops being fresh and becomes salt. You can't draw a line. You can't say, here is where it happened. It just happens. And by the time you realize it, you're already in it, already part of something so vast that the river you were no longer exists as a river. Not because it died, because it arrived. That's what Psalm 46 has been whispering to you this entire time. Not in pieces, in wholeness. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God. Be still and know that I am God. Do you see it now? The mountains falling, the earth giving way. That's not a prophecy of destruction. That's a description of your life. Every loss was a mountain falling. Every grief was an earthquake. And the psalmist isn't saying God will stop the mountains from falling. The psalmist is saying, Even when they do, even when everything you thought was permanent crumbles beneath your feet, there is a river, and the river is not destroyed. The river is not afraid. The river flows through the rubble and the wreckage and the ruins of what you thought your life would be, and it carries something that no earthquake can reach. Peace. Not peace that comes from everything being okay. Peace that comes from knowing in your body, in your bones, in that place beneath your ribs where the truth lives. That the river inside you is fed by a source that has no beginning and no end. That the silence you feared was God holding you. That the prayers you thought went unanswered were the answers themselves, wearing a language you hadn't learned to hear yet. The most powerful prayer for inner peace and healing was never a list of words. It was never a formula. It was never something you had to get right. The most powerful prayer is the one you've already been praying. In your sleepless nights, in your frozen silence, in the ache that you thought meant God was far away. That ache was not distance. That ache was depth. You were going deeper, and now, here you are, standing at the edge of something vast, feeling the current pull you toward a peace that doesn't need your permission to exist. Be still and know. Not be still and try. Not be still and hope. Be still and know. The knowing is already yours. It has been yours since the first night you whispered into the dark, and the dark didn't answer, because the dark wasn't ignoring you. The dark was making room. You are the river. You are the city. You are the place where God dwells. And the peace you've been searching for has been searching you. And now, in this breath, in this silence, in this moment where you stop trying and start simply being, it has found you. If this reached something inside you, follow this channel, come back tomorrow, and share this video with 5 people you love. Someone who needs to hear that their silence is not empty, that their river hasn't run dry, that the peace they've been begging for is closer than their own breath. Leave a comment below. Not a comment about the video, a comment about what you felt, what shifted, what thawed. And if there's something you need me to talk about next, something that keeps you awake, something you can't name, something that hurts in a way you've never been able to explain, tell me. I'll listen. I always listen, and the sea will be waiting.